Lesson 5. Distinguish pain points from buying triggers. You have mapped the problems your customer has. Now you need to distinguish their chronic pain from the specific event that makes them take action. Knowing the difference is the difference between copy that describes a problem and copy that sells a solution. This lesson builds on your raw inventory and pain hierarchy. In this episode, you will label your problems as pain points or triggers, map triggers to your offer, and write a headline that speaks to your customer's buying trigger. You have mapped the problems your customer has. Now you need to distinguish their chronic pain from the specific event that makes them take action. Knowing the difference is the difference between copy that describes a problem and copy that sells a solution. A pain point is a chronic condition. It is a problem your customer lives with. A buying trigger is the specific event that makes them say enough is enough. It is the moment they decide to act. If you only know the pain point, your copy will describe their situation. But if you know the buying trigger, your copy can speak to the moment they are ready to buy. This lesson teaches you to identify triggers from your customer research and to use them in your marketing. First, a pain point is a chronic condition. A trigger is the acute event that makes them act. Second, customers can live with pain for years. They will only act when a specific event forces them to. Third, your copy should describe the pain point to create empathy and the trigger to create urgency. Fourth, the best marketing speaks to the trigger, not just the pain. It names the moment the customer decided to change. And finally, if you cannot name the trigger for your customer, you are relying on them to find you when they are ready. That is a slow and expensive growth strategy. You have two frameworks. First, the pain trigger distinction model. This classifies your customer's problems into chronic pain points and acute buying triggers. It helps you identify what to describe in your copy and what to use to create urgency. Second, the trigger mapping exercise. This is a worksheet that connects each buying trigger to your offer. It ensures you are not just describing a problem, but speaking to the moment of decision. Your pain hierarchy tells you what is urgent, but urgency is not the same as a buying trigger. Your customer may be living with a painful, urgent problem and still not buy. Why? Because they have not yet experienced the specific event that forces them to act. That event is the buying trigger. It is the moment the chronic pain becomes acute. This lesson is about finding that moment. You will go back to your raw inventory and look for the events your customers describe as the last straw. You will map those triggers to your offer. The output is a trigger map, a document that tells you exactly what to say in your marketing to create urgency. The trigger map you build here complements your pain hierarchy. The hierarchy tells you what to focus on. The trigger map tells you how to talk about it. Use this lesson to shift your copy from describing a problem to speaking directly to the moment your customer is ready to buy. The output for this lesson is your trigger map. Let's build your trigger map. First, identify pain points in your inventory. Go through your raw inventory and identify the chronic problems your customer describes. These are the pain points. Mark them as pain point in your list. For example, pain point: I always struggle to get traffic to my website. Next, identify buying triggers in your inventory. Now look for the last straw events. What specific situation forced the customer to look for a solution? Mark these as trigger. For example, trigger: my last campaign spent $5,000 and got 0 sales. That is when I knew I had to figure this out. Now, map triggers to your offer. For each trigger, note how your offer addresses the situation. What feature or benefit directly solves the problem that was triggered? For example, trigger: spent $5,000 and got 0 sales. Offer: we provide a targeting audit that prevents wasted spend. Finally, write copy that uses the trigger. Write one headline that speaks directly to the trigger. Use the customer's language. The goal is to make the reader feel like you understand the moment they are in. For example, headline: stop burning $5,000 on ads that don't convert. Get your targeting audit now. Pause the video and complete these 4 steps. Your to-do list. First, go through your raw inventory and label each problem as a pain point or a trigger. Second, for each trigger, describe the specific event that caused the customer to act. Third, map each trigger to a specific feature or benefit of your offer. Fourth, write a headline that speaks directly to your customer's buying trigger. And finally, complete the exercise and reflection to finalize your trigger map. Your trigger map is a copywriting tool. It tells you what to say to create urgency. Let's look at the Salesforce case. Salesforce needed to sell its CRM to enterprise clients. They found that many companies struggled with sales process inefficiency. This was a chronic pain point. But the pain alone was not enough to drive a buying decision. Companies lived with the pain for years. What they did was identify the buying trigger, a major sales quarter failure. When a company missed a huge revenue target, the CEO demanded a solution. Salesforce's marketing started speaking to that exact moment of failure. The outcome was an increased conversion rate, dramatically higher urgency in sales calls, and accelerated deal velocity. Now apply this. First, identify. In your raw inventory, what are the chronic pain points your customers describe? What is the last straw event that made them act? Name both the pain and the trigger for at least 3 customers. Second, what to do. For your top pain hierarchy problem, what is the specific event that would trigger a buying decision? Write that trigger down. Now write a headline that speaks to that exact moment. Third, the outcome. If you wrote your entire marketing campaign around the buying trigger instead of the pain point, what specific change would you see in your conversion metrics? Pause and write your answers. Here are some tips. The most common shortcut is to treat all problems as triggers. This happens when you assume that any problem is enough to drive a sale. But most problems are not enough. The specific event is the key. Real completion looks like a trigger map where each entry has a specific named event. The more specific the trigger, the more powerful the copy. And the trap is writing copy that describes the pain point without naming the trigger. This leads to copy that educates but does not convert. Pause the video and open your workbook to the Lesson 5 worksheet. For each trigger, write the chronic pain point, the specific buying event, and your offer solution. This worksheet connects pain points to buying events. Use it to guide your copywriting. When you write your sales pages, speak to the trigger, not just the pain. Track your progress. Check pain points labeled when every chronic problem is labeled as a pain point. Check buying triggers identified when you have named at least 3 specific events that trigger a buying decision. Check triggers mapped to offer when each trigger is connected to a specific feature or benefit. And check copy written from trigger when you have written a headline that speaks to the trigger. You have built a trigger map. You now know the difference between a chronic pain point and a buying trigger. This shift will change your copy. This lesson's output is your trigger map. Use the calculator to check your trigger clarity. Count the number of triggers you named. The benchmark is at least 3. Count the number of pain points you labeled. The benchmark is at least 5. And count the number of triggers you mapped to your offer. The benchmark is at least 3. If you have fewer than 3 triggers, you need to dig deeper into your customer research. For this exercise, write a 1-paragraph story about your customer's situation. Start with the chronic pain point. For years, they struggled with. Then describe the trigger event, until one day, when X happened. Finally, introduce your solution. That is when they found us, and we helped them. Read it aloud. Does it create urgency? For reflection, your customers have a trigger. You may have heard it in an interview but hesitated to name it because it seems too blunt. What is the trigger you are avoiding? What would happen if you put it in your headline? For research, look up loss aversion in marketing psychology. Research shows people are more motivated to avoid losses than to achieve gains. This principle is directly tied to buying triggers. Understanding it will help you frame your copy more effectively. For action, pick the most powerful trigger from your map. This week, write an email or a landing page that uses this trigger as the opening hook. Send it to a small test segment. Track the response. This is your homework. Next time, we map your problems using the jobs to be done lens.